Welcome back to Rise and Tell with Sheekha. I am Sheekha Singh, your host and author. I have got something special to share. My brand new book, Unburnable Ambition, How Overachievers Win Without Burning Out, is coming on Jan 5th, 2026. This book is for all of us who dream big but refuse to let burnout be the price. If you'd like early chapter, preview, and launch bonuses, head to shikhasingh.com/unburnableambition and sign up today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast Rise and Tell with Sheekha. I am your host, Sheekha Singh, and I am pumped to tell you about our next guest. I was supercharged after my discussion with our guest for the show today. Our guest is Guy Morris. Guy is incredibly smart, highly talented, and super adventurous. And I do not say these words lightly. Guy Morris retired from a 38-year-old leadership career with Fortune 500 software, high-tech, and global energy companies with a reputation as a thought leader, innovator, in implementing multiple phases of leading edge technologies since the 80s. He is obsessed with writing great stories that involve politics, AI, history, and also religion. He has also been a published songwriter for Disney Records. He was also a pilot screenplay writer, a patented inventor, a Coast Guard charter captain, a paddy driver and adventurer, and an author of a series of multiple award-winning intelligent thrillers. Since his 2020 initial book launch, Guy has released 3 award-winning thrillers that are inspired by true stories, actual technologies, and his passion shows. Before he writes each story, he walks us through his process, which is incredibly detailed. He's compared most often by top industry review firms to Dan Brown, Iris Johansson, or Robert Ludlum. And Guy explains everything in detail. His energy is infectious. And I will now stop talking and we'll just get started so you can decide for yourself. So there you go, everybody. We have with us Guy Morris. Thank you so much, Guy, for being a guest on our show. Welcome.
Thank you, Sheikha. It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. All right, we'll just dive right in.
Okay.
You've been compared to Dan Brown.
Yes.
You have published so many books. You are all over the place because you are a published songwriter, an author. You had so much experience working for the Fortune 500 companies. You have experience with the AI and initial stages of AI. How did it lead to all of this?
Well, you're asking a really big question. How did it lead to that? Wow. I started off my life as a 13-year-old runaway, and then I left home with a GED at age 15 and never looked back. So my entire life was trying to prove that I wasn't the loser I was told I was for the first 15 years. And when I had the chance to go back to college, I saw it as an opportunity to change my stars. This was my opportunity. Other kids had all the benefits in life. I had none. This was my opportunity to catch up. But I knew that it was going to take hard work because no one was going to pay attention to a homeless runaway kid that had no family background or no pedigree at all. So I got used to the idea that in order to succeed, I had to overperform. And there was a couple of sort of, I want to call them mantras, but they were kind of things that I would say to myself, which is, the first one was, we never want to let our past define our future. I didn't want to let all of the traumas and struggles and things of my childhood define what kind of future I wanted to build for myself. I didn't want that to define me.
Right.
But that meant that I had to redefine it myself. When I was in college, I was functionally illiterate when I entered college. By the time I graduated undergraduate, I had 3 degrees. Wow. I was at the top of the dean's list. I had been given an intern at IBM, and I didn't even interview for it. I was given a full scholarship to go to grad school at U of A, which was where I was going at the time. I was also accepted into Harvard MBA program, but I didn't have the money to go. And I got a letter of accommodation from the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And all of that was because I had designed a macroeconomic model that had outperformed the Federal Reserve and changed how we build economic models to this day.
Wow.
Now, I didn't realize really the significance of what I had done. I was just trying to get a grad degree. I was just trying to get a scholarship.
Right.
But because I was out of money, and I really wanted to get my master's, and I really want to continue my education. But while I was in college, I started to fall in love with men of the Renaissance.
Okay.
Now, the Renaissance was important because in our day and age, we like to have people who are specialized. I'm not just a doctor. I'm a doctor of this really narrow form of medicine, right? I'm not just a developer, a coder. I'm a coder of specific types of application types.
Right.
And so we built such a complicated world that in order to succeed, many people have to specialize. That just felt so restrictive and boring to me. It was like, no, I want to get the master's degree in business administration. I want to learn about computers and economics and society and art and medicine and science and physics. And, I want to know more about quantum computing. I just want it to be a sponge and soak everything up. Once I learned how to love learning, I couldn't get enough. Now, when you go into your career, they solve that for you because they work you 18 hours a day and you don't have time for anything other than a couple of meals, a bathroom break, and a few hours of sleep. And so you spend your career in that constant pushing forward. But even then, I still wanted to reinvent myself and continue to reinvent myself. And so I had started off in college. I was a musician. At one point in my career, I had a friend of mine who knew I was a songwriter, asked me to write some songs for a kids project he was doing with Nickelodeon. Those songs wound up on the desk of an executive at Disney Records.
Wow.
I don't know how my friend sent them there. I never sent them out.
Right.
They called me up and asked me if I would write some songs for them. And so my life was always pursuing new things. When I at one point in time, I moved out of a condo because I really wanted to go more sailing and do more adventures, but I couldn't afford both. And I was a single parent. So I moved my son and I onto a 50-foot sailing yacht. And I got a Coast Guard charter captain license, and I got Patty's certified master diver's license. And I would go shark feeding without a cage and exploring wrecks off of Catalina Island. And I wanted my life to be as full and as I was given an opportunity. I was given a gift of an education, and it changed my life. And the last thing I wanted to do was be lazy with that gift.
Yes.
And so everything since has been a pay it forward
of
life,
nice.
Trying to live a better life, become a better person, solve some real problems, both in businesses and culture and other things, explore some of the mysteries that other people haven't solved, see if I could take my shot at it. And it was that kind of drove it. Now, one of the things that inspired my books actually came from one of those, what the hell, let's try, see if I can figure it out.
That's
There was
insane.
a small little article in a magazine from Associated Press, and the article only had 3 sentences. The first sentence was, a program has escaped the Lawrence Livermore Laboratories at Sandia. That was the first sentence. The second 2 sentences were, if I had any information, to contact somebody at the FBI or somebody at Sandia. That's all it said. My obsessive, weird, geeky, nerdy, single parent with no money to go out on dates, I have to do something tonight perspective. I decided, I cut it out. I taped it to my monitor. I looked at that article every single day for months. It didn't say the program was lost.
Right.
It didn't say the program was stolen. It didn't say the program malfunctioned. It said the program escaped and they couldn't find it. I was like, whoa,
Right.
James Bond, cool stuff, right? I determined that I was going to figure out how.
Exactly.
Technologically, there has to be a way for that program. It was in a designed intelligence. And so I was going to figure out how that program escaped and why in the heck would they design it that way?
Yeah.
They and then I produced an award-winning webisode series that got all kinds of awards, all kinds of attention. We were optioned by one of the studios until 2 FBI agents showed up at my door.
No way.
I thought it was a friend of mine who was a film producer who had hired some out of work actors to put on some black suits and give me a hard time. I laughed at them, told them that it was a great joke to tell Jackie had really done a good one. And when I started to close the door, they stopped me and said, "No, we're the FBI." And they showed me their badges. And I was like, "Oh, this is so freaking cool. You're here. You're here. You wouldn't be here if I was wrong. I figured it out. I'm telling all my friends." I was absolutely over the top obnoxious.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure the younger one looked at his boss with that look that you see in the movies that says, "Boss, can I shoot him? Just let me shoot him, please." They gave me the "we are not amused" speech. I gave them the "whatever" shrug. What are you going to do? I didn't break anything, steal anything, hack anything. I'm just a smart ass, and there's no laws against that.
Right.
So it was, for me, it was the best. My wife came home afterwards, pulls me aside, and asked me why there's 2 FBI agents in my dining room. For me, it was the best night ever. Best night ever. That incident stuck with me because I had been building a career on how to use advanced technologies to change the business, to change enterprise, to change economics, to change trade, to change analysis, to change operating efficiencies. I hadn't really thought much about how the things we were building for all of those purposes could be repurposed for espionage or war or surveillance or bad stuff.
Right.
And it got me more in touch with that darker side of technology that, frankly, in the business, we gloss over in the business world. You know, even the security issues created by our own products, we gloss over until somebody in tech is going to fix those eventually. But that's not my problem. I got to sell this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but it got me in touch with that. And I started doing more research about what the government was doing and how it was doing it and why it was doing it. I started then using my own imagination. I used to tell people I'm going to go put on my Q hat now. So referring to the old James Bond movies, right? I was the Q nerd, figuring out how to use all these cool text to help Bond save the world. But I was trying to decode it. And the fact that I had nailed that first one encouraged me to keep up. And that program became the major featured character and story behind my award-winning thriller series.
Wow. That is awesome.
So it derived from real life and all of the research into the real things that we're doing, the real dangers that we don't really want to talk about on the news, the treaties of the Great Reset. What does that really mean for people? You know, the Project 2025, what does that really mean for people? All of these AI technologies and lack of any sort of meaningful regulation to stop the proliferation means that we now have AI software to develop malicious software.
Yes.
You know, Worm GPT, Fraud GPT, Darkbird. There's all kinds. There's dozens. Predator, Pegasus. There's dozens of different software packages that are meant for malicious purposes being sold on the dark web and the black market.
Correct.
And so one of the things I wanted to do with my books was to raise awareness in the public of not AI from the sci-fi, iRobot, Terminator, Mission Impossible BS.
Right.
But I wanted them to get in touch with, no, it's still really, really damn dangerous, but in a different way that you don't know about.
Right.
And one of the key dangers is not just that for the first time in all of human history, in our entire evolution, we're not the smartest thing in the room anymore. Right. And not only are we not the smartest thing in the room, but we've taught that thing how to code itself, which means it can replicate itself.
Right.
And not only have we taught it to replicate itself, we're teaching it to kill on its own. And so I feel like Tolstoy wrote War and Peace because he wanted to tell the world about the reality of switching from imperialism to communism and all of the suffering that was going on as a result.
Right.
I wanted to write my Snow Chronicles series, to warn the world about the triple threat of AI and other advanced tech getting out of control, the collapsing and corruption of our geopolitical system in plain sight,
Right.
and how all of that connects to multiple traditions of prophecy that's happening in plain sight. So I wanted to bring in a spiritual element because that's the only way we get through this, is to refocus back on that humanity, right? It can't be just about the technology itself, because then it gets into all of those cliches and tropes of dystopia and the machine becomes evil and takes over the world. And that's just not the reality. The reality is the machines will have a darker side because we have a darker side. It will be conflicted because we're conflicted. The bad things it's learning to do, it's learning from us. If we were training the machines on the personality of a young puppy, there would be no problem at all. But we're training it to think like us.
Human. Yeah.
That's a problem because we're a problem.
Correct.
And we're not something AI can fix. The spineless backbone of Congress, AI can't fix that. The corruption of leaders, AI can't fix that. The greed in our corporate system, AI can't fix that. But it will do a lot of amazing things.
Yes.
And I've spent my entire career learning about, mastering, advocating, implementing, building the advanced technologies that makes our world, our time, unique to any and every other time in all of history on 100 different levels. Now I'm turning my attention to saying, well, there's a dark side to that,
right,
that we're not necessarily paying close attention to. And that will unfortunately be the side that drives our humanity, because it's the side that power will hold on to. And power and corruption at the top of society have always been those things that drive society forward. Not the goodness. There's billions of people on the planet that are just working hard. They're good people. They're loving people. They love their family. They love their neighbors. They don't want war. They don't want any of these things. They want to feed the people in Gaza. They want to get the rich people to pay their fair share in taxes. They want to rebuild the infrastructure so it's not collapsing. They want to feed the poor kids so they can go to school and get an education so they can make themselves better. And that's something I believe in because it's something I had to live. We're not doing those things.
right.
And we're not doing those things. It's not because we don't have the money. We got plenty of money. It's not because we have too much debt. The debt is that's a tax policy problem, not a revenue problem. It's because of those dark angels in the human psyche and soul. And we just can't quite. If AI could teach us how to eliminate that, that would be a cool trick.
Yeah, true.
So I'm really kind of looking at trying to hold up a mirror to the world and saying, these are the things that are happening in real time. And these are how they're going to affect us in the next few years.
Correct.
And each of us, but we're not victims. Each of us have a choice.
We do.
And get those choices, and we show those choices through the characters in the story. So the characters in the story have to be colorful. They have to be intelligent. They have to be witty. They have to have lots of flaws so we can identify with all of them. They have to make a lot of stupid mistakes, but somehow seem to come out okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the way we are. We make stupid mistakes, but somehow we figure it out in the end because of internal humanity and courage. And it reinforces that sense of, it doesn't matter this chaos that's going on right now around us. And we're all feeling, right?
Correct.
We're all feeling.
Yeah.
But what it gets down to is what kind of choices we make as individuals and who are the people we surround ourselves during this time. Those are things we can control.
Yeah.
And so while I'm dealing with some very difficult topics, you're getting informed with a lot of factual information.
Right.
You're seeing this through the lens of some compelling characters through a story that you want to read. So it's like you're too young to remember, but I grew up in the Cold War. So we were constantly worried that if we turned on the news, it was Russia dropped a bomb, we dropped a bomb, somebody dropped a bomb.
Right.
Every week we were afraid of this. I mean, it was the existential crisis we were living with. And now I really feel for kids today because their crisis is real, which is school shootings, at least in America. In Canada, they don't have to worry about that. But that's a real crisis that kids are traumatized with today. But back then it was the Cold War. And we would go to a James Bond movie or a British Avengers movie or one of the other great war spy movies. And we'd get this battle between Russia and the United States. And we'd realize that, well, they were just people too. And they were just following orders and we're just following orders. But somehow James Bond saved the day. And while the Cold War was still raging on, we walked out of the movie theater feel like, okay, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do with my books. Just like Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park to warn the world that, hey, dealing with DNA and cloning and manipulation, when we combine really advanced technologies with hubris and pride and greed, not always a good outcome.
Right.
And so that's what we're doing today. There's lots of forecasts coming out from the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, Goldman Sachs, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Trilateral Commission. Many of them are projecting 100 to maybe 150 plus million new jobs coming out of the AI phenomenon. But they're now trying to bury their earlier estimates. Well, yeah, but that might cost us 500 billion jobs.
Right.
If that
Right.
So within the next 5 years, we could have 350 million middle-class people underemployed or unemployed.
Right.
And the amount of crisis that's going to create in the housing market, in the consumer debt markets, in the national debt, because they're no longer paying taxes if they're not making money.
Right.
And that middle class is the bulk of where all of the industrialized nations get their tax revenues. So we're going to take a really big hit to that tax base at a time when the debt levels are kind of teetering at some dangerous levels because of mismanagement. So we're looking at what I call convergence. And those are there's three big themes in the book that we talked about: AI, corruption, and prophecy. And so in prophecy, we look primarily at biblical text, but we also look at Jewish text, Islamic text. We also, in the latest book, The Image, we pull up the tradition of the Yugas and talk about the Yuga tradition. And so we're trying to say that multiple faiths have a tradition that the world has gone through cycles of creation and destruction. And we're now have all the signs of that destructive phase that has to basically implode before we can start over with a new creation. And that goes back to this idea of giving us ourselves an idea that we have choices, right? We have options. Yeah. That one of the things that we can do is reground in our spirituality.
Right.
And so it's trying to pull these things together in a really fun James Bond meets an Indiana Jones thrill ride that has the savvy of a Steve Jobs. And so far, I've won a gold award for the first book, Swarm. Actually, Swarm won 2 or 3 awards. Second book, The Last Ark, won silver award for International Book Contest, Reader's Favorite. And the latest book, The Image, which I'm most excited about, I think is the most hard-hitting and the most provocative and the most really a lot of twists and turns you don't expect, I believe is going to win the award. I got a notice, an email that it's going to win a Literary Excellence Award out of Reader's House in the UK.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to congratulate you, Guy. Congratulations for all these awards and congratulations for just acing and killing it at each department that you've stepped into. I think that's a great accomplishment and that's something inspiring. I find it very inspiring because, one, I definitely want to be someone who writes such interesting topics, societal concerns, but through fiction and conveying that message through fiction. I think that's a very powerful tool. And second, for all the tech, I love tech myself, and I'm not as geeky or nerdy as you, but a little bit. Like there's a little bit of curiosity of, how things work. Why are things this way? Why are we doing it this way? So I share the enthusiasm again a little bit, but not too much. But I love it. I love the fact that you've gotten all these awards and you're trying to send out this message. But I do have a question, Guy. You've been so you just gave us a detailed overview of everything that you've done, why you've done, and what exactly.
The surface. We're just skimming over a few highlights.
Awesome.
Go ahead. Question. Yeah.
That is awesome. I want to know, when you're sitting down and you get this idea in your head that, okay, I want to now tackle this problem that we have through this book idea. Where do you get the time? How do you put it on a paper? How do you document it? And how do you start that process from ideation to a paperback or a hardcover in your hand?
Excellent set of questions. There's several in there. One is, where do I get the time? One is, I don't sleep well. Since I was a child, and in part because of the traumas, I had chronic difficulty sleeping at night. So I will oftentimes I'll work to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. When it's really quiet, nobody's disturbing me. All I have is just me in my head and my computer, and I can do whatever I want and go wherever I want. No interruptions.
Right.
There is a discipline. And I tell everybody, I said, when I retired, the biggest fear for me in retirement was losing a sense of purpose.
Right.
I have a highly dysfunctional relationship with leisure. I don't get along well with sitting around watching TV.
Right.
I can't sit out on the back porch and relax and just watch the trees and the breeze go by. I live by the water where we can see ships going by, and I like to watch it time to time. But if I sit too long, I feel like there's ants crawling on my skin. So I have to do something. Now, when I get an idea, oftentimes the idea starts with a question.
Right.
How did that work? How did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did they do that? Why did they design a program that could escape?
Right.
What were they trying to do with that program? Should I be worried? And then comes up with maybe a few different kind of concepts from that.
Yeah.
And then a list of things to research.
Got it.
I don't know enough about this or that. I don't know. Well, where's it going to be set? I don't know. I guess I should go do some location research. Maybe I should take some trips. I don't know enough about that technology. What is that? How does that technology work? What are the known risks that I should be worried about? If I type risks for this technology, what's it going to give me? If I go to AI and ask it what those risks are, what will it give me? And starting to come up with a series of questions of things that I should investigate more.
Right.
And the start of every book starts with usually 2 or 3 or 4, a few books, and then several dozens of articles to start filling in that list. And I keep folders where I have hundreds of different files. And sometimes I'll have a word sheet that has 6 or 7 articles of the same topic copied and printed in the same document, so I can get it all in one place.
Right.
I have stacks of paper and bookshelves and file cabinets full of different topics on different versions of topics on AI, the legal, the lethal, the risks, quantum computing, neuromorphic computing, geopolitical issues, the Great Reset, Project 25, boxes of research. It starts with trying to understand how the heck is going, what's the real fabric of what's going on.
Right.
And then asking some tough questions. What could go wrong? What happens if this goes wrong? Now, for me, there's also the underlying theme of prophecy. So some of the questions I might ask is, well, if all of these other prophecies are already complete, what might be some of the next ones to occur? And is there anything in this research that connects back to that? Right. So then I start to say, how do these dots connect? Where are the connecting points between the Great Reset and their plan to make AI the fourth industrial revolution? These studies to indicate one of the reasons they're going to do that is to displace 500 million people, which gives them a lot more power, transfers a lot more wealth, creates much more of a police state. How would they use it? What's the implication in military, in espionage? How is the government using this? How is it going to impact the Ukraine war, the Israeli war? Was there an impact on the 2024 election? And how does that connect to Project 2025? And so I start to say, well, what are all the questions? What are all the things I need to understand? And then start figuring out, well, on a rough basis, how are these dots connecting? And then I start to think about, now, what's the story? What's the human story? What's the character story? So in the books, there's 5 main characters.
Okay.
There's Derek Taylor, that's not his real name. He's living under the name of a dear friend who died in an explosion that was meant for him after he hacked a Bilderberg server. Jen Scott, who's the admiral's daughter, who's the straight-laced one. She's an ex-Navy SEAL. She was in naval intelligence. She originally started this journey to bust Derek Taylor because she believed he was in charge of the Sylvia program. The Sylvia program is the AI that was based on the true program that escaped the NSA. And I made it an AI because in order for it to escape, it had to have some fundamental intelligence algorithms to say, where am I going? Why am I going there? And how do I erase my trails behind me so they won't know how to find me? It was brilliant. But it makes for a great character. Now, the other thing that was happening at the time that this happened was we were working on, in the laboratories, we were working on early versions of deep fake technologies, deep fake audio, speech recognition and replication, and basic image replication. Yep. And I assumed that if they were going to create this super spy program, I would sure want to have some elements of that in there because it might help me. I wouldn't want this secret spy program unless I was going to put it someplace where it wasn't supposed to be, which meant that it had to have capabilities to hack in someplace. One of those capabilities is the same techniques a hacker would use, which is trick somebody into giving you their password, right? So the CEO gets the secretary, calls him on the phone. It sounds just like his secretary. So-and-so just showed up. I need to access your system. Tell him this information. Sure, we do this all the time because we trust people. So we see AI already doing this in the commercial. As soon as it's released in the commercial sector, it does what it was trained to do in the government sector. Correct. Is deceive. So we start to see that character. Now, the founder, the creator of this AI, the Sylvia, is created as a character. He's based on Sir Geoffrey Hinton, who's the godfather of AI, who created machine learning, who resigned Google when he became concerned that the AI were becoming too human, too powerful, and we weren't managing it. And then there's Jester, who's an autistic savant, quantum engineer, physicist, engineer, computer programmer, who is weird. It's like a bohemian guy with tattoos all over, piercings all over, super hyper anxiety, tapping, always doing weird things. But he's an absolute savant when it comes to quantum computing, which actually is the technology that we need to have in real life in order to take binary super intelligence into where we're actually working on. There's companies working on this right now. They want to take the super intelligence and make it conscious.
Oh, wow.
What could go wrong with that? Now, the cliche is it becomes evil.
Right.
I'm exploring the more nuanced, which is not necessarily. Okay. It's going to be like all AI. It's going to be like humans, where it's going to do good things and some evil things, and we don't know why at times. Right. And so we're going to have to create those nuances. So those are the characters that each have to own a piece of this narrative thread.
So this is like your process for each book, or this specific?
This is the process. So once I have all of these issues that I want to talk about, I figure out what are my themes.
Right.
So now I've discovered my research. I've discovered the connections. I've asked myself a lot of questions I don't know the answers to.
Right.
And I have to figure out what are my key themes for this book, because there's always 10 times more than I can ever talk about.
Right.
So what are my key themes for this book? What are the key technologies I want to highlight for this book? What are the key risks I want to highlight for this book? And which of these characters are going to own which of those themes? And then I start building the plot.
Awesome. And then how does the actual writing process go? Is it a lot of back and forth between your research and your story? Or is it just your heads down, just typing and just... getting everything out that's in your.
I will plan the whole book out because I have all of these themes and characters that are in the story. They have to connect in at meaningful points and meaningful layers. So that takes work. So I'll plan it out. But so by the time I start actually writing, I say chapter 1. Right. I already have an idea of the arc where it's going to go, or the multiple arcs. Yeah. And an idea of how it's going to end. Now, I don't let that restrict me if during the process I go, no, this is happening. This is what, I didn't, this is, so I don't let it restrict the creative process. Right. But it guides me in that first draft. And Stephen King always says the first draft always sucks. Always. They always stink. Never just that's a fat outline, right? Right. That's all it is. But it allows me to get through the first draft quickly. So I can, once I'm done all of those typically 18 months to 2 years of planning, I can bang out a first draft in 6 weeks, 8 weeks tops. Then the real work starts. It's got to read well. It's got to be compelling. The dialogue has got to be engaging. It's got to feel real. The emotions have to feel real. I've got to think about things like, what does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? How is this character really going to react to that event? Did I downplay their reaction, or should I upplay that reaction? Oh no, this chapter really needs to come in after that chapter. This is breaking the flow. Oh, I can't know this before I know that. And you wind up I'll go through then typically 30 to 60 revisions. Wow. On top of that, making all of those little tiny changes, and sometimes stopping in the middle or writing the first draft and saying, I don't know what happens here. I got to go look up, research this location and find blah, 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 or research this technology and fill it in here. So while I'm writing, then I'll go back to the research and do more research, or go look up the research I have to fill those in. But then it's polishing. Now, have you ever watched anybody who sculpts? No, not really. Sculpting is conceptual. It's iterative. It's just like software. You're going to get a kind of a rough outline first. You're going to start with a couple of functional components, and then you're going to add a little bit more. And then you're going to add some user interface. And then you're going to get the marketing group to give you all the pretty images to go into that user interface, right? Well, sculpting is that. You're going to get some general sizes and shapes, and this branch is going to be an arm, and this is going to be this, and you're sculpting out the general shape and just getting the general motions, and then you're sculpting the actual figure itself, and it looks really good. Then you get into the most time-consuming process of all, polishing it. Right. Getting it so that you get a shine on it, that it feels complete. It doesn't feel like it's missing something. It doesn't feel like it was rushed. And the last book, The Image, I wrote 36 versions of that book. Oh, wow. Before I put it to publish. Now, The Image starts off by helping us understand how the Sylvia has become conscious and what it's doing with that power. And we start off by finding out that the Sylvia has gone in and helped CERN to create a mini black hole so it could prove a fifth dimension. Oh, wow. And that fifth dimension opens up a portal that entangles all of the world's computers with a quantum signal that only the Sylvia and its quantum partner can figure out eventually. But we start to deal with quantum issues of consciousness in humans. What does consciousness look like in machines, and why are they different? Right. What are the risks of having conscious machines while we have corrupting politics? So it's one of the key themes that we always come back to is the technology is neither evil nor benign. Who's using the technology for what reasons? The technology in the hands of a sociopathic billionaire, the technology in the hands of a dictator, a war criminal, a drug lord, a crime lord, a warlord, a elected official who's corrupt, a CEO who's corrupt. Right. What about this technology in their hands, and how does that change the risk profile? And so we start to explore by having these issues of quantum consciousness. It allows us to explore. We'll explore the Great Reset. the Ukraine war, a little bit about the Israeli war, the 2024 election. And there's always a religious or a theme, a spiritual theme in there beyond how some of these things are actually fulfilling prophecies, including the Uyghurs.
Right.
But one of the themes that we bring in is the true origin, the true history behind the Shroud of Turin. That history dates to the 1st century in Anatolia, Turkey, when it was called in a town called Edessa, when it was once called the Image of Edessa. It was a pilgrimage site for hundreds of years until Justin I, the emperor, took it to Constantinople. And in the 6th, 7th, and 8th century, they minted coins after the image. And we can find those coins in the museum in Istanbul.
Got it. Wow. That's a lengthy process. And wow, no wonder your books are so successful, because you are actually putting in that much effort into polishing, research, story, arcs, everything.
Fortune 500 training.
Yeah.
Fortune 500 training. And the CXO, don't you dare come to my office unprepared.
Right.
I might not fire you on the spot, but I will humiliate you in front of everybody.
Right.
That's the rule. That's just the rule.
Yeah.
So I think I brought some of that with me to say, if I want others to be impressed, I have to do it so that I would be impressed. I have obsessively high standards.
God, it's so evident based on the way you're explaining everything with that passion and, each details and all of this elements in the story. I think that is evident, and it screams a lot about,
the characters
passion,
in the book Swarm. Many of the characters come from people I've met in my life around the world. So I would put them in a different setting. So people that I had a team when I was at Microsoft. I had a 35-member team in Hyderabad, India. And so some of the members of that team, their characters in their name basically got transferred into the spy book. Their professions obviously changed, but I was able to include, I'm bringing these people in because they were funny people. They were cool people. They were interesting people. I liked them. They were colorful, so people I know might become spies. They might become, one of them became a hooker in Amsterdam. One of them was a pedicab driver in Hyderabad, One of them became a Christian. He was a Hindu, devout Hindu. I made him a Christian priest.
Right, right.
We're trying to mix up the stereotypes, right? We're trying to say that, one of the problems in the world is our tribalism. And Mark Twain, who was a really famous satirist and novelist from the 19th century, said that the best way to combat traveling is one of the best ways of destroying bigotry, because you learned about people in their own culture and environment, and you learn how much we're the same and how much you love part of some. Once you understand their culture, you start to fall in love with it. Right. And one of my big loves in life that I love as a retired guy is to travel. And so my latest book, The Image, probably 2/3 of the locations in that book came from places I had traveled the year before in Italy. So this year was Spain. With everything going on, we're not traveling as much as we were, but I like to bring in real life people, real life places, real life things, because I want it to feel authentic to you.
Yes. Wow, that's great. One thing where I could relate is I was born and raised in Hyderabad. So that's funny that and we went to Spain this year. So
wonderful. I loved Hyderabad. I went to the castle. I went to some of the old forts. I went to some of the old ruins, the ancient ruins that were even. I can't remember some of the names off the top of my head. I took a trip downtown to the mosque and that whole area, and that actually got into the story, and so it was a life-changing experience for me. It was a real eye-opener. I loved it. And I knew I wanted to pull some of that color in. There was even a restaurant, a Sheekha, that has different places around town. And I wanted to bring in the authenticity of being in a real Indian restaurant owned by a real Indian family, with the smells and the family environment and all of that. And so, as I said, it's not just about the technology. I can talk about the dystopic parts of the story because I'm an analyst. I was trained to basically understand all the mechanics of the world and translate that to strategy, right?
Yeah.
But as a novelist, that has to become the backstory for the human part of the story.
Correct. I was going to ask you about that. Like, how do you separate that? Because you're so passionate about the technology piece, but you answered it wonderfully. I am very curious, Guy. I know you talk about that program that escaped. Can I ask you which language it was coded in?
Oh, well, this was in the late 90s. So, I'd have to kind of go back and kind of figure out the languages back then, but it was more of the architecture. Certainly C++ would have been part of it. A
Got
lot
it.
of that. It would have had some web components. So it would have had, because it had to basically have some web crawling capabilities.
Yeah.
It had to have some, I'm imagining some other code in the background because it had to be able to hack into things. And I can't remember, there's a special language used in the video parts of the application. It's not C++, but having a mental block. I go through so much stuff that one of the things I don't have is a really deep long-term memory. So that's why I have stacks of papers, because that's my memory.
Right. No problem.
But yes, but it was interesting in how it did it, because I figured it had to have a distributed processing architecture, right? Because it couldn't take processing from one location, and that would also make it vulnerable, which means that it could replicate different components and send in basically web crawlers in. So it could move its processing into multiple places, so it had a low profile, and it must have the ability to change the log codes in order to prevent them from knowing where it was going, which would also prevent it from avoiding scans, because it could change the name and move itself within the system. So the system might be scanning this drive, it can move the component to that drive and rename it. And it had to, and it was looking for information. It was looking for information that it could analyze and basically send back someplace, or somehow it wasn't accumulating the information. It was processing it. It was analyzing it, because it didn't have a data attached to it. So I had to figure out the architecture. First off, what does escape mean?
Right.
Technically, what does that look like? And then functionally, if that's its architecture, what are the kinds of things that I would want a spy program that could do from that architecture? Now, at the time, we knew that we could turn on your desk phone without turning on the light, right? The desk mic.
Right.
I knew that I could turn on your webcam without turning on the light, without you knowing. I could turn your monitor I could reverse the polarity of your monitor, and when it was off, I could use it like a camera. These were all things that we were doing in the late 90s. And so these are things that I would expect to have this program be able to do in order to capture information that they couldn't capture otherwise.
Right.
And so I just basically went through the data center. I went through technologies I knew we had, and I basically thought like Q, and I said, well, that's what my program's going to do. I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that, I'm going to use this to capture that data, I'm going to analyze it with this data, I'm going to use deepfake to get this information. And I thought it was just all an imaginative exercise on my part, until the FBI showed up at my door that day.
I can just imagine. I am a very visual person, so I'm already imagining you and the two FBI agents at your dining table. Wow, that's insane. That's incredible.
I definitely did not act like any of the people I see on television. I was not what they were expecting, for sure. And I admitted it. I said, yeah, I figured it out. And I showed them the article, and I showed them my research papers, and I do the same thing I do now. I had stacks of magazine articles that, that I'd cut out and copied, and I circled things, and I wrote, and I figured it out. And I basically showed them. I said, smart ass, what are you going to do? Hey, you should hire me. That did not go over well either. So I said, guys, I know you were supposed to be here to figure out if I'm a bad guy. I'm obviously not. I know you're trying to figure out here if I'm a threat. I'm obviously not. Well, they wanted me to shut down the webisode series and stop talking about it. That's where I said, that's where I have to draw the line.
Right.
So I said, I figured this out on my own. You can deny that I know shit. I mean, you can go on radio. If you're worried about it, go make a public statement and say, this guy's full of crap. He's, even though he's saying this is based on a true story, don't believe him. It's not true. You do that all the time. So there's another reason you wanted my silence. And that was because you didn't want the enemy to know you could do this.
Right.
You didn't
Right.
want the other governments to figure out that this was real.
Right.
And so when I refused, they left in a bit of a huff. My wife came home and she got huffy. And then they went to the studio. The studio had optioned the show at the time because I was running out of money. I was in between jobs and I thought this was a fun thing to do in between jobs. And so they went to the studio and killed the deal. So I lost the deal. So we closed the episode. We closed it because we blamed the FBI. we told the fans, I said, the FBI is shooting down us. They don't want us to talk about this real program that escaped. We're going to have to go offline for now, but don't worry, we'll be back. And so
Right.
when I started writing the book series, it was my way of coming.
Lovely. Wow. I feel like giving you a standing ovation. This is awesome.
It's fun. Now, we haven't even talked, we never get into my book, The Curse of Cortez, which took me 12 years to research because
Oh,
I was
wow.
trying to solve a real historical mystery of why the real pirate, Henry Morgan, would abandon over $1 billion in treasure along with 600 souls and 3 ships never seen again. And then Morgan went insane and burned his logbooks. I was able to connect his insanity to events that led all the way back to the origin of the Mayan creation myth. The book has layers of history,
Really?
archaeology, mythology. The modern story has humor, romance, paranormal, adventure. You'll laugh, cry, grip your nails till they break. You end with a big smile. So all of these books, that one involved getting one of the characters in the book is based on a guy named Shea Gulan. The real Shea Gulan, I didn't change his name, was a fugitive from Israel. He
Okay.
was wanted by Interpol, wanted by the FBI. He was living in Cancun at the time doing dirty work for the Zeta cartel. When he broke into my condo in Cancun while I was out researching the book, and when I got back, he threatened to he said he was taking over my condo. He threatened to kill me if I tried to mess with him.
Wow.
Now, I remind you, I was a street kid in LA. The official street kid response to something like that was, "Oh, no, you didn't." So after I told him that he was messing with the wrong gringo, that he had 2 days to get out of my condo or he would regret ever learning my name, he didn't leave. And it took me 2 months, but I cost him everything he owned. I finally got even during the process, the cartel themselves, I met with a cartel representative behind a Kinko's in an alley at 1 o'clock in the morning. His name was Jose. Jose told me that for only 25 grand, they would take Shea into the jungle and no one would ever find him because they didn't like him either. I said,
Wow.
I'm a Christian. And that's a little bit over. I might be able to do the money, but that's just a little bit over. I'm just wanting to get him out of the condo. I don't care about him after that. So, but I did get him out. I took everything he owned. I put it in trash bags, including a big safe that he had put in there. I put it all out in front of the condominium on the median between the lanes. And by the morning, the locals had taken everything.
Wow.
So once I messed with him in Cancun, I put him in the book, and I messed with him in the book. I got my tooth. So you got to think strategically with these things.
Exactly. Wow. You are amazing. I cannot even imagine how it would be to have a drink with you in person, guy.
My wife tells me don't get him started talking. He won't shut up.
That's exactly what Simon tells about me too. Wow, that's
Now, she
funny.
also tells me I'm not allowed to talk about the AI parts of my book and all the dystopic stuff when I have dinner guests. I'm not allowed to talk about my books with dinner guests over because she wants to have them back.
Right, right. Wow, this has been a hoot. I thoroughly enjoyed myself and learning your process, your enthusiasm. I think now I know what I lack when it comes to things that I love about. I do not get that excited and I don't show others because I often think, what are they going to think about me if I tell them this crazy idea that I have in my head that wouldn't make sense to them? But I think I'm going to stop doing that after listening to you.
Crazy heads have been the lanterns of illumination throughout history. Think of it. Every brilliant person in history at one point in time, every brilliant idea at one point in time has been told they were insane. Been
Yeah.
told they were crazy. Been told they're if we take the Western world, I know in the Indian world, the Eastern world, there's a whole bunch of them as well. And they were oftentimes persecuted or killed.
Right.
And we have the same in the Western world.
Yeah.
Some of the smartest people on the planet, if they contradict the common belief is that's a threat.
Right.
That's heresy. That's crazy talk. We can't have you talking like a witch,
Yeah.
Galileo.
Correct.
And in my latest book, I deal with some of the politics in the U.S.
Right.
And I call the Project 2025 a fascist manifesto, which in my mind, that's exactly what it is. I've studied history.
Yeah.
I understand the economics and the policy things that went along with those labels. And that's what we're trying to implement. That's what we are implementing now in the United States, which is scary as heck for me and for a lot of my friends.
Yeah.
And while I can write about those things, I have to be I don't name names except for Putin. I don't name names. I figure he's got better things to do than come after me. But people can recognize the real people that are inspiring those things.
Yes.
And as a result, one of my friends basically said that with some of the books, especially I'm working on a nonfiction book right now called Prophecy Analytics, and where I'm pretty specific about who I think is the problem. And she said, this is going to turn you into an enemy for people. This is going to turn you into a target.
Right.
But there's a famous saying, and I can't remember who said it, that said, no man who seeks after the truth can ever worry about public opinion.
Right.
And so that's the choice. Do I write meaningless schlock that doesn't really offend anybody? Or do I use the last years, my post-retirement, my third act, if I'm going to write something well, I should write something provocative, right, and insightful and hopefully challenging of the status quo where the status quo is wrong. Yes. Morally. And so that's my choice. And I've chosen to say, well, I'm going to write about the tougher things. That means doing more homework, getting some of my facts straight, being careful how I deal with characters and having both sides of the viewpoints at some point, while clearly having a skewed opinion of where the view should go in terms of where the characters go. But that's the lesson I'm trying to leave, right? Jurassic Park ended positively. All the main characters that we wanted to survive survived. Some of the ones that were fodder, well, that somebody has to die in order for us to get the tension going. But they got their pension from the Actors Guild. But the point is, the book was there to say, we're okay, but should we be really messing with this type of technology in these types of ways? Yeah. And I'm very concerned. Now, I don't know if your readers or how many people are aware, in 2023, a professor at MIT named Max Tegmark issued an open letter that 30,000 experts, policymakers, scholastic leaders, some CEOs all signed, that basically one of the things it said is it wanted to do was to take a 6-month pause, every lab in the world to take a 6-month pause and send representatives to work together on what we think the correct guardrails, regulations, shared agreements of what we will do and won't do, what we will share and won't share, to make sure that this is a safe technology that doesn't get out of control and is used abusively. Right. Because it's already proliferating. 30,000 experts, and 50% of those experts felt that there was at least a 10% chance, up to a 60% chance that it could turn catastrophic if we didn't. Wow. That they're saying that this is existential. Not a single lab on the planet complied. So that's telling me that we're making the same mistakes that we've made in the past with tobacco, social media, knowing oil and gas was polluting, but trying to cover it up, the information, the dangers of social media and mental health. Yeah. And we're doing it again with AI because there's just too doggone much money at stake. And money is the god of this society, whether there's individuals who have more spiritual gods that are based on the real universe, that's different. How the system works, right? How the system operates is based on the god of money. Right. And that's the one that's driving us forward.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is amazing, amazing
Thank
session,
you,
guy.
Sheekha, for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun. You've been delightful to talk to, and you're very informed about all these issues and great questions. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule and sharing all this information with us, Guy. This is incredible. I've learned a lot today. That is for sure. And you've inspired me to not shut down my crazy ideas, but to put it in writing. So
Put it
thank you
right
for
in.
that.
And you know, if you make it fiction, it works.
Yeah.
You take the crazy ideas, and that's the thing about fiction is it's not I'm getting all these facts to lay the foundation, but the fictional part is okay, me imagining, okay, what could go wrong and who's making it go wrong for what reason.
Correct.
So you can explore the crazy ideas. You just have to make up a really cool bad guy to do it.
Exactly. Correct. Well, thank you so much for your time, Guy. It was a pleasure having you on our show.
My pleasure, Journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in for today's episode of Rise and Tell with Shikha. My upcoming book, Unburnable Ambition, is all about how to chase your biggest goals without losing yourself to burnout. You can now sign up at shikhasingh.com/unburnable ambition for early access and launch updates. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself, and keep your ambition unburnable. Thank you.